Welcome to the third episode of the Mental Minds podcast. Today it's just Colm and me again after having had a guest over last time. Had a lot of fun. It was a great conversation.
Yeah.
If you didn't check it out so far, definitely go ahead, check it out. Fahd was a super interesting guest to have on the podcast. But today it's just going to be the two of us, and we'll be talking about retreats and meditation more specifically. And I think we had this idea straight from the beginning that we wanted to talk about this because we both are definitely, you could say, advocates for mindfulness in general, and retreats also specifically as an opportunity to really learn the technique of meditation. What is it actually all about? And to take your time out of the off from society somewhere in a special setting. So I'm happy we're doing this.
Yeah, I'm also really looking forward to this conversation. I'm in ways proud that we made it to episode 3 without touching too much upon it.
Yeah, that's true.
Because I think, I'm not sure if it was the case for you, but when I first told family and friends that I was doing a podcast with Daniel, the first thing I really got was, okay. And when I told them that it was Mental Minds, that was our name, they just immediately said, oh, it's a meditation podcast.
Really? Meditation?
Yeah,
okay.
They were convinced, okay, when you put these two guys together, they must be talking about meditation every episode. And so, I'm quite excited to have this conversation. We've obviously had a lot of, I think, private conversations about the topic, but I think we have a nice format for today.
Certainly not the first time that we talk about it in general.
No, definitely not. But I think we're going to touch upon some topics even that we haven't really discussed that will also stimulate our thinking and also explain for people that maybe don't know what our paths were with meditation, what our experiences were like with retreats specifically. Yeah.
We'll pick up the threads there that we kind of left in the first conversation because we touched a bit upon it.
Yeah.
Of course, there was no way to omit it in the first conversation. Also no need to. But we'll dive a bit deeper into that. So we'll start off with you, Colm, right? So with your retreat experience. Tell us a little something about how it all went down.
Sure. So I think my retreat was a long time coming, really. I went on my first retreat my first and only retreat this past summer in the end of August. I went to the hills of Spain near Valencia, where I did a private retreat that lasted about 4 days. And it was a nice experience. It was a silent meditation retreat. We were about 10 people. It was a very close community, and the instructors were brilliant. We did a bit of yoga as well with the retreat, but it was certainly focused on meditation, and it took on, although we did explore a lot of different types of meditation, it definitely, the main form was Vipassana meditation and taking on this. I would say in Western circles, what you typically would experience for a meditation retreat. Yeah. So it was 4 days. I was quite excited. I think I'd been building up to this moment and wanting this for the past, I would say, 2 years. Because of COVID, it had really been difficult to find a place in a retreat for quite some time. I wanted to do a 10-day Goenka Vipassana retreat, as we'll kind of get into. That's something that you've experienced. And
maybe we should just clarify in the beginning, what is actually Vipassana?
Yeah, so the Vipassana is just a type of meditation. I believe that it translates kind of as clear awareness or
insight also.
Yes, exactly, insight meditation. And it basically just involves being mindful of anything that comes to consciousness, any senses, whether that's just following your breath or whether that's the sensation of you sitting in a chair or sitting on your cushion. It could also be smell, it could be taste, it could be eyesight, even when your eyes are closed, what you're kind of experiencing in your visual realm. And it can also be thoughts. And it's definitely, Vipassana, for those people that don't know, is almost always what, if you've ever done a guided meditation, through an app like Headspace or Calm or Waking Up, you've probably done Vipassana meditation, or a variant of it. It's definitely the most westernized form, I believe, of meditation out there that has been extracted from Eastern traditions. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would also say so. I mean, there's also transcendental meditation, for example. There are many kinds of meditation. Some of them are like quite different from others, but for what we here can speak most for, because we don't know much from personal practice, also is Vipassana meditation. So it's important to point that out. But yeah, let's look at your retreat a little closer. Like, how did you experience it from start to beginning, and what happened in between?
Yeah. So like I said, I think I had been building up to this moment, and I had consulted people like yourself and also friends of mine that had done retreats, and I had, I think, a decent expectation of, a decent idea of what to expect when I went into it, that it wasn't going to be easy, that I wasn't simply just getting a break from normal life, that it was going to be hard work, and I really was looking forward to this. I was struggling with my meditation practice at the time, so I was looking forward to developing some stronger meditation habits. So we arrived on day one, and after a bit of meet and greet, the silence began, and we proceeded to do meditations in the first day of around 20 minutes at a time, building up to, I think, around 40 minutes at the end of on the fourth day. And we did about 3 to 4 hours of meditation in total, I would say, per day. And in between that, you had moments of, obviously having your meals. There was other moments of just pure break, or when we would listen to a Dhamma talk, as it was called. So basically a kind of lecture on meditation or Buddhism. We also did some walking meditations, and it was a nice variation. We even had a mindful dance. That was one of my favorite parts about it. Yeah. That was also, as someone that loves to dance, that was a really also special experience, completely in silence, more kind of very, let's say, tribal or even psychedelic kind of music. And that was super special, just being completely secluded from society in this.
Because where would you get that opportunity to do something like that?
Yeah, and that was also very special.
Yeah.
But it was really interesting because I think the one thing that I didn't really expect, I really expected that I would get into the zone.
Yeah.
And I knew what the schedule looked like. I knew that there was significant breaks. We had like a siesta period where it was about 3 hours in the middle of the day. And I was thinking, okay, well, eating only takes 30 minutes. So I have almost 2.5 hours, and surely I won't be able to interact with anyone. There's no reading. There's no writing. At least I chose not to, and it was encouraged not to. And so there's not really anything you can do. And I remember thinking that, I'm just going to use that time to meditate. I'll be in the zone. Surely I'll just kind of get completely comfortable with that. And then I'll take instead of doing 3.5 hours as was prescribed, I'll just take that up to, that 7 hours, and I'll have an even better experience. That did not happen. That was totally... It was super hard to compel myself to go sit again during my breaks. And so...
Why is that?
I think, to be completely frank, a bit of it was definitely the weather. Of course, it was unbelievably hot in Spain in August.
Important to mention.
Yeah. And so, middle of the day, you just wanted nothing but to just sit there, even if you were bored, just in somewhere where it was shade, at least for myself.
Yeah.
But it was exhausting.
Yeah.
The meditations were exhausting.
Although you're only sitting there, which seems so counterintuitive to most people.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. But so after you've done a 40-minute meditation, after you did 3 meditations that morning already, you don't, the first thing you think is, it's so hard to actually will yourself to go back into that tent and then do another meditation.
Yeah.
And I tried, maybe I'll do a 15-minute meditation or something, and better than nothing, but it was really hard to will myself to do meditation. One part of it also was that the meditations were much more powerful when we were doing them as a group.
Yeah.
I can't explain this. It's something that I've always felt with meditation, that when I meditate with someone else, maybe it's social kind of influence or pressure or something like this, but I've always felt that when I meditate with another person, that I reach a deeper state, that my practice is a lot more, is just a lot more valuable than when I've meditated alone. And so,
how can you explain that though?
It's something that is strange to me completely.
Yeah.
But there was certainly at this retreat, there was this sense of we're in it together.
Yeah.
And although no one was talking, although no one, for 4 days, you didn't really have an insight into what people were thinking in their mind.
Yeah.
Of course, you could kind of see it at times, but you also had this sense of not only giving support to the people that you were with, but also of receiving the support, even though it was completely.
Although no word was exchanged.
No word was being exchanged, and it was interesting when we finally broke the silence on the last day, and there was some testimonials from people, and it was such a diverse crowd. We were about, I believe, 10 people from, I believe, only 2 people from the same country. Everyone was from different cultures, different ages. Someone, we went from, I think, 70 years old to my age, 20, 25, maybe even a bit younger, I'm not sure. But there was so many testimonials after of, I feel like I know each of you better than people I've known for years, or that we have shared something so deep, even though there was no contact, there was no communication.
Yeah. At least no verbal communication.
Yes.
But obviously a lot of communication still on the non-verbal level, which is interesting.
Of course. And we're still in contact today. Of course, it's only been a couple of months, but it is really interesting that there was kind of this shared experience that really pulled us together, that made connecting with each other so much easier, and that was quite powerful. Yeah,
I believe so.
Yeah.
What did you like best about it, or like what were the benefits you took away from it also afterwards?
For me personally, it was, I had a very as far as takeaways afterwards, I believe it's tough because for me personally, I really noticed how impermanent it was, and I think we'll talk about that a bit later.
Yeah.
But I really noticed that although it totally reduced my stress levels, that I felt way less anxious. It was kind of a bit of an anxious summer for me anyways, and I found that it was exactly what I needed. And although it really was so beneficial to me, I felt that if you asked me about a week or 2 weeks after, I don't know how much of that really integrated into my regular day-to-day life.
Yeah.
I still think that there's moments where I catch myself, and lessons that my teacher Ellen taught me throughout the retreat kind of comes to mind, and I'm able to take a breath. But some of the best moments were really maybe becoming more comfortable with my mind, I would say. I think I had kind of come in, because I was struggling with my meditation practice so much, I'd come in with this idea that it was always me against my mind. Yeah. And it was kind of this dynamic in which he was the bad guy, I was the good guy, and it was always me trying to pull him in, in line to not think distracted or to break out of negative habits. And I felt that when I went to sit and meditate, it was often, this was how I framed it, that it was me battling against them. This kind of
still so antagonistic, right?
Yes, completely.
In a division there.
Completely.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest takeaways, one of the best moments was when my teacher, Ellen, she said something that really changed my perspective, where she said, your mind's not there to hurt you. It's just trying to help you.
Yeah.
You need your mind to navigate life, to be able to deal with things, to be able to think through things, to be able to survive. And I never framed it like that. I never framed that my mind was just trying to take care of me. It was just trying to help
you
me
in
out.
the right direction.
And
so to
sometimes
say.
it goes too far, you know? And I think that was one of the best things, was just kind of, I really noticed my relationship with my mind change a lot better from this, almost criticizing it when I would overthink and ruminate and go too far. Why are you doing that?
Yeah.
You don't need to be thinking about that. We've already decided that this is the, way we're going to go. To instead saying, okay, maybe you're going a bit too far, mind. I know you're just trying to help me. I'm just going to pull you back and be a bit more present.
Yeah.
That was super helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not trying to beat your own mind.
Exactly. Because
any competition there makes no sense.
Yeah.
With yourself, at
least. Of course. Of course.
Clearly.
What about your experience? Tell us.
Let's get into that. There definitely is some contrasts to your experience. So first of all, it is already long ago. So it was in the beginning of 2019. So just before the pandemic hit, I just finished my first semester of uni, and had already heard about Vipassana retreats before from my friends who had done it, and they were always like, "Oh, Daniel, you have to do it. You will like it." And I always had it in the back of my mind. Before I wasn't that much into meditation, I would say even. I think I remember even first times it was hard to even stay focused for 10 minutes. Me just can only recall, just when not even 10 minutes had passed, me picking up my phone. It's like, what? It must be now 10 minutes,
Like every meditator has come across this point.
exactly. Absolute rookie there. But then I fortunately got a spot at a Vipassana retreat in Morocco. So me and a friend were actually flying out there to a Vipassana retreat that was 10 days. And it wasn't like yours was with let's say mixed kind of methods, mixed approaches there, but it was really just focused on learning Vipassana meditation. And they were very much emphasizing that this is this is one of the purest forms, so to say, delivered, so to say, straight, not straight from the tap, straight from the Buddha down. But there is some good arguments that this tradition was relatively well maintained in these kind of retreats that I also attended, because it's just a little background there. It was started Vipassana retreats in that form by Goenka, one guy comes from Myanmar, who popularized it through India, now all over the world. And it's in contrast to yours, also important there to say, it's like a non-profit organization there. Also, we'll get a bit into that later. Is it wrong to take charge people money or capitalize on retreats or not? We'll leave that for later. But maybe that's also important just to point that out in the beginning. That's something that's completely organized by volunteers and based on donations, and also silent retreat, completely silent, 10 days. No reading, no writing allowed, no phone, nothing, obviously. How did it start? So I went then out to Marrakesh and drove towards the Atlas Mountains. It was really a beautiful scenery also surrounding me there. It was like an eco lodge that they booked for us. And it's just insane also that if you really don't have the funds, that you can just attend this. And it still kind of works out with the finances for them. So I went there, and first evening, introduction, and the first gong starts, and silence sets in. And in the beginning, it is very odd. You've just been introduced to some other people there. You are actually talking just when you arrive there. It's only in the evening that it kind of starts. In the afternoon, you're still chatting with people, getting to know them a little bit, and then silence sets in. And that's something definitely to get used to. I thought I would have bigger problems like coping with that, but it was actually fine. Some other people, for example, my friend then, who told me afterwards that he had a really, really hard time not talking about what is going on inside of him. He had so many moments where he even wanted like to go up to me or something, share something, some of his experience, and he had a really, really hard time inhibiting himself there. But yeah, during those 10 days, you meditate. I think it's mandatory to meditate only like 3 hours. But there's like nothing else going on, right? So it's literally from the first session that you can attend. It's really early. It's at 4:30 already in the morning, and the sun is not even risen at that point. And then you have breakfast at like around 6, and then it continues throughout the whole day basically. But you have breaks in between. It's not like 24/7 meditation. Yeah. But if you kind of do it, so to say, properly, you should end up meditating around 8 to 10 hours per day. And I think that's also what it ended up being like for me today. So it's insane really how much meditation time, how much practice time you can actually compress in these 10 days then, because like 10 hours per day is really 100 hours you have meditated in such a short period of time. And I found that to be quite powerful. So
and it's also just interesting just to pick up on something that you said there, because it was pretty similar with me with these breaks, although I think I used maybe this time less to meditate. At the end of the day, during these breaks, you are really left with nothing but being with your mind. There is nothing to do there. You can't. You're not reading. You're not interacting with someone. There's nothing really that distracts you. Maybe for me a bit more. There was still. I was in the outdoors. It was beautiful. Yeah. But you really have to become comfortable with either your mind or boredom, and probably both.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, it's kind of interesting what kind of activities, like if you could call it like that, you end up doing when you have nothing to do. I remember just, watching the ants, like, crawl across the floor, or like doing whatever, or just looking at leaves that are of some trees that are around, but really inspecting them, really taking the time, because you've got nothing else to do, and there's some real beauty in that. Just actually attending to what is going on. And the deeper you also dive into the practice, the more your capacity for moment-to-moment awareness increases, and the more you can appreciate something as trivial, you could say, as simple as a leaf, of a tree that we usually just pass by. We realize, okay, that was a tree, maybe not. Maybe we don't even. But if you really look into it, look at the structure and all the beauty there is in it, that's something you, I think, really have a good opportunity to perceive in that kind of clarity when you go on a retreat.
Yeah. I have one question we'll definitely get back to. I want to hear all the rest of your retreat experience, but just to pick up on something you said there, but why is it so much more beautiful? You use the example of a leaf or watching ants or something. Why is that so much more beautiful than, say, using our time as we do in our everyday lives to watch TV or distract ourselves or have a conversation with a friend? Why, or is it equal parts beautiful, or what is the difference there?
I think we need to talk about like what happens actually to the mind and to one's state of consciousness when you meditate, either regularly or like in such an intense kind of format like a retreat is what happens is, I think a lot of this like self-circling thought, self-referential thought that sometimes spirals out of control quickly, that makes our perception very shallow, tunes down. Because in the beginning you actually become aware, like painfully aware of like how much of that self-narrating is going on in your mind. And that's completely normal. I think it's for everyone like that. But if you really give yourself the time to not react to whatever inner stimulus comes up of like, oh, I should have said that the other day, or what will be like a potential like future for me? How does that look like? Or whatever goes on in your mind, you just observe it, right? That is your first and foremost task when you're there is just observing whatever's going on, non-judgmentally. And through that kind of practice, that translates also to everyday experience beyond the meditative sessions, because then you're also not trying to judge whatever's going on. So if you take the example of TV there, you really look at it like what it is without constantly framing opinions about what's going on. And only through the practice of meditation, I would say you become aware of how much of your thoughts just revolve around yourself, around your basically ego based motivations. And I think that is quite powerful. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's almost providing a kind of look into your mind that you couldn't have had through something like conversation. I think. But to get back to your retreat experience, take us just through kind of how every day changed. So you explained kind of the first day with the silence, how that was a very interesting experience. So take us through the rest of the days.
Yeah. So I already knew from my friends that from I think the third or fourth day onwards, you'd be required. That's also an important fact to mention. Every meditation session was right from the beginning 1 hour. So that is quite demanding, especially if you don't have the practice that much before. That you would sit for 1 hour still, completely. Like you wouldn't move whatever happens. That's kind of, it's called a strong determination, to really be like, even if, I don't know, my leg is crying for just, a little scratch or whatever it is, but you just don't react. And I knew that would be coming on the third or fourth day. So I was like, I want to get to that point already as quick as possible. And for that, I made my second day already to my, you could say personal hell, because it was incredibly challenging to get to that point, to really realize that you don't have to react, and you have to almost physiologically convince yourself of that. Like your whole body needs to be aware of it, because in the beginning it's really like you have the impression, your body tells you that it needs it right now. It needs that, scratch on the back or whatever it is, or like that little movement with the shoulder or something like that. Oh, that would be so good. You really have to do that, so to say. But to gain the distance between, or to gain that moment between stimulus and reaction, or non-reaction, then that's what's so important. So I really had a tough day on the second one, you could say, for sure. But I think that paid off, because once I got to the hour and I managed to sit for 1 hour, there was no excuse anymore. And there was barely one time where it was even as much of its challenge, or it seems almost strange to me even now how much effort it cost me, like in the beginning, to get up to that 1 hour. So you realize it's all in your mind, it's all in your mind, and that's very powerful. You over the course of these 10 days, you realize more and more. You get this meta awareness of what's actually going on inside of you. And another point there to mention is that you become aware of your ego drives. How much like that there's so much going on that is just fundamentally ego motivated inside of your mind, and you're like, wait a second, am I this person really? Like you don't want to accept some of these facts in the beginning, but by looking at them, by observing them without becoming judgmental, you can come to accept them, and only then transcend them through that.
Yeah, that was also one of my experiences on retreat, was just realizing how much of my thinking patterns and behaviors are ego protecting. Yeah, it was insane for me. And
what is behind that? That's a question, and that's interesting, And once you kind of look past it, you transcend those like ego motivations, at least the worst of them. What motivation is there afterwards? What kind of energies are released by liberating yourselves from these fundamentally self-hurting kind of patterns. So,
Yeah.
you don't do nobody a favor with these kind of, trying to present yourself in such and such a way. It's not like we can completely abandon it, but it also doesn't do us no good,
No, I think once you break through these, I'm not claiming to have done this. I think at certain moments, probably on retreat more than anything, I have at some point. But now in my regular daily life, I think I rarely, if not never, break through these ego protection. But I think once you do break through these, like you were saying, I think you really get to a point of just kindness for others.
Yeah, that's definitely, we need to get to that, because what is behind that? What is, once you transcend that, I think, or what at least I felt and experienced, is really a lot of compassion. It sounds very cliche-like, but it gets much easier to take others' perspective, because you have all of those layers of biases that cloud your perceptions, slowly fade away, fade into the background, and I would dare to say that you can perceive reality a bit clearer. You just also have that immediate perception of clarity, I would say, and that is definitely something that allows you to have a better understanding, and really, when somebody tells you something, for example, to really stick with that person instead of just going back, automatically reverting back to your own mind, already thinking about, okay, I also felt like this, or blah, 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 connecting that to one's own stories or something like that, but really be with the other person, especially when the silence was broken at the end, just connecting it to how your experience was afterwards. I would 100% agree with that there was such a strong connection amongst this small community there that just meditated together, people you have never talked to before, and yet in that moment you really feel like you really share something, you shared some very valuable experience together, and that bonds you to them for whatever reason. I also have a hard time really explaining that, what is actually there going on the social level afterwards, but everybody is is operating at a very empathetic kind of level, and that's beautiful to experience.
So it's a nice segue. Like you just talked about kind of the silence ending at the end of so you've made it through. Your second day was terrible, and the days after that, you kind of from what I kind of know, and I imagine you've settled in, kind of, so to say. What was it like when the silence broke, when the ceremony was over? Were you screaming out to kind of go talk to people? Were you super excited to share, or was it overwhelming?
Yeah. Before I received the advice to not, follow one's own drive, the compensatory drive to really now, talk to everyone, because that's literally what's going on. I think for most people, even the more introverted ones, will have a desire then to share what was going on, and also just to socialize, because it's also so rewarding, because there's so much, you feel so bonded to these people around you. Then it's quite something very beautiful. But of course, the first few words, that was kind of funny, honestly. Like talking with my friend, the Wallace, shout outs to him, talking the first few words again. That was so hilarious, hearing one's own voice again. Also, it's very funny.
A lot of stuttering, a lot of thought.
It's really, really hilarious. But now it's really nice. To then also socialize with people again after complete abstinence of it. But what is also very interesting then, because is then to find out how much it also gets you out of the meditative depths you were actually in before, because you don't realize when during those 10 days, as you slowly ascend, I don't know which one to use there, to slowly descend, so to say, into the depths of your mind, you don't realize actually how deep you actually get, because it's so gradual, the process. But then once you're in the external world again, you're being pulled up very suddenly from these depths, depths. It's kind of interesting then to try to meditate after having socialized like 2 or 3 hours, not more than that, because there is a meditation then after like 2 or 3 hours where the silence is already broken, and you feel like, oh my God, what a change. And you still have just now meditated almost 100 hours before. It was only 2 or 3 hours of socializing going on between. And my bodily awareness, my mind was not there as much anymore. My mind was racing with all of these thoughts of these people, like conversations, just had, and you were really ripped out of that kind of stillness of the mind. And that was quite something to experience. Very, very powerful also to realize this contrast between before and after. And that just goes to show, I think, how valuable it also is to take really the deep dive there in the form of a retreat.
So now it's been about 20 months on from when you had your retreat. How does it still form? What does it still form in your own life today?
I think it's very hard to point out the all the effects that it had, especially the indirect ones, but it clearly kicked off something very powerful. I would say it was a crucial point in my life, just having started studying, having doubts about, okay, can I actually do this? Something we touched upon, I touched upon in the first episode. And it really instigated a process of, focus and, self-awareness, productivity in the positive sense, that's definitely something I very much value this experience, and it's very hard to imagine my path without being as positive without this kind of retreat. I for the most part of these 20 months, I continued meditating every day for 1 hour. Right now, I also feel like I need that kind of retreat again, just to also refresh the practice, to remind myself really on the most fundamental level. Although I'm talking now very positively about this experience, I think realize it wholly. In order to do that, I think to get to refresh that, and for me personally, another retreat would be now very helpful. Because right now I'm a bit struggling just with keeping up that 1 hour every day, no matter what happens, no matter whether you're super busy, exams coming up, and that was so easy, that was so effortless in the beginning, but one can always find very good excuses for not doing it then.
But even that's one thing I'm kind of thinking of right now is, an hour is a significant chunk of your day to take out, I think there is some decent arguments you can make. So I know you as a person, and that you're pretty driven with your meditation practice, that an hour is very important to you, but would even, 30 minutes, 20 minutes, would that not suffice? How do you view that?
Yeah. It's something I'm not dogmatic about. So I would say I just wanted to have for myself, to not be all right, today I only have time for so much. Let me go with the easier way, so to say. But to in the beginning, to really keep up, to be disciplined, because I was man, I did these 10 hours every day. 1 hour is not too much to ask. And we have 16 hours that we wake during the day. So to say, sacrificing 1 hour of that is not too much to ask. That was kind of my thinking for a long time. But I would say I became less dogmatic about it, as it's okay, if you find out for yourself, that 1 hour in the long run 1 hour per day doesn't give you much more than half an hour per day, that's fine. It's really an individual kind of thing you have to figure out yourself. But I think it is valuable to be able also to do that 1 hour for sure, because I would say you do get some extra benefits, some extra depth. But that's really something that I can only speak there from my personal experience. It's nothing that I would overgeneralize quickly. How do you feel about it?
I think the time is not so important. I think just a daily practice is pretty substantial. It's just like, I kind of view meditation, although I do believe really in meditation in the more spiritual and finding meaning aspect of it.
Yeah.
I think I was attracted to meditation at first for the therapeutic reasons, the benefits to my emotional states, my attention, all this stuff. And now I think I probably subscribe more to I view it as a way of finding meaning in life. But I think I still, in some ways, view meditation as going to the mental gym.
Yeah.
And yet, just as I should be getting decent exercise, in my opinion, every single day and having it consistently a part of my daily schedule, meditation is just like that. And so some days I think I meditate 10 minutes and I'm satisfied with that. Some days I meditate 30 minutes. I'm satisfied with that. The only time that I'm unsatisfied is when I don't meditate at all.
Yeah.
And I think that's more important than the specific time.
Yeah.
But I do agree completely that I think for me, there definitely is a sweet spot of around after 20 minutes, I notice that I've come deeper.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not like you. I'm not crazy. I'm not doing an hour meditation every day. To me, this is, I know another friend of ours, Anton.
Yeah.
You guys are, I admire you guys greatly. You're a bit crazy, but I admire you guys greatly that you're doing this. But so maybe I'm missing it. Maybe I think there is something to be gained from doing an hour. But I personally don't know that.
And in order to find that out, I feel like you need to have done that 1 hour at least once. And then you can say, you know.
True.
Yeah. I think that's definitely something we should discuss a bit, this aspect of or contrasting the therapeutic effect with this more like general giving meaning to life aspect. Because I think a very popular view on meditation there in the West is just like it's like an instant cure to stress, just like a workout or something like that, and what is, I think, neglected is are the not the state effects, but the trait effects that can come from it. And I think it's very hard to appreciate them if you've never done it, if you've never given it such a thorough chance, like having sacrificed 10 days for it. And it is a substantial amount of time. And I can definitely also say, I would say that, a lot of people don't have the time, if you're really working like a stressful job, to really take 10 days off. It's quite something to ask for. But it's that aspect I feel like is underappreciated in, I would say, also the public discussion about it. I'm talking about the meaning and the clarity of perception aspect in contrast to the therapeutic aspect. Would you agree to that?
Yeah, I would agree. I think in general, something that you kind of have brought up is that meditation is definitely a trend right now.
Yeah.
And it's also the self-help trend. And I think it's, with these trends, very easy to kind of view them as the cure to all ills.
Absolutely.
And meditation, even, for someone that is like you or doing even more meditation for longer, I think they would even say like, okay, no, this is a very wrong view of meditation.
Yeah.
I think someone that I really admire that is teaching meditation, has his own meditation app, Dan Harris.
Yeah.
He says meditation, he's been doing it for years, meditation makes me 10% happier.
Yeah.
And I think that's really the perfect way, is that it's not going to make you not an asshole sometimes, It's not going to make you not get stressed out, but can it somewhat help alleviate that?
Yeah.
Another thing that it's very important to, I think, understand is that it is a long-term practice.
Yeah.
That I think it's almost different than exercise in that way, because I think, for example, sometimes I think I'll just go for a 30-minute run, and I do feel like really this sense of state change.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's the same with meditation. I would say that I definitely feel more relaxed, but I think the effect is a lot smaller. But I think over the longer term, once you have developed a practice, that you can have these maybe more trait effects, or these, more, consistent, I guess, mood changes.
Yeah.
That I would agree with.
Yeah, definitely. I think that also we can connect that to the question also that we have is like how much of that, also especially talking about retreats, how much of those effects are just placebo or expectation effects, that it just happens because you expect, okay, this is going to give me that. And it's very powerful, it's even powerful if you know that the treatment itself is non-effective, as we can see in medicine with placebos, right? And how much of that of these positive effects would you attribute to potentially just to expectation effects?
Yeah, I think undoubtedly this can be the case. I think, there's been some academic studies even about meditation, and one of the, they've always revealed positive changes, once you sort through all the text. I wish sometimes that they would just say like, what we expected and it was good instead of just kind of like listing all this stuff. But the one thing that with all these, even academic studies is that people are self-selecting. They're going to these meditation retreats. So it's hard to know if, and it was even something that I saw on retreat that, I think myself, even people that I went to, they really went with this idea of, I'm looking for something. Yeah. And that's a powerful motivation. Absolutely. When you go there and you're looking for something, sometimes you'll find it. It's just like going to, if you're religious and you go to a church, I think. Now, personally, I still believe that there is, something more to it beyond the expectation, but I think we definitely can't rule it out. Yeah,
absolutely not. But I think that the effects of regular practice are too powerful to be merely placebo, because a part of the state effects, I think you could explain also with expectation effect, especially when you start out. It's like, all right, I did my 15-minute meditation. Now I have to feel so relaxed, Oh, how relaxed do I feel, But I think when it comes to the trait effects, that is very hard to explain merely with placebo, like with such perseverance. When you realize that the way you see reality most fundamentally changes quite a lot, how you interact with people, how you empathize with people, that I think you cannot alone just explain by expectation effects, But they do clearly play a role. I don't doubt that.
Yeah. I think this is really interesting. This is something that we kind of wanted to include. Yeah, we're kind of already entered it, but maybe we can even enter it a bit deeper, is that I think it's become quite clear to everyone that's listening that, Daniel and I are big fans of meditation and mindfulness retreats. And I think one thing that we really set out when we wanted to do this podcast was to show a variety of views and to almost be critical about the subjects that we're talking. Almost. We're going to try our best.
Sure. We are clearly biased, as you can tell.
Of course. But I think it's nice that we try and, maybe we should do this, that I try and put on my best critique or skeptic kind of hat, and we try and kind of go through maybe some of the things that are, not so nice about meditation retreats or mindfulness, or some of the kind of, common, maybe because it is just a fad, like a trend that we could kind of try and explore this region. And so maybe I'll put on my skeptic hat. You'll
put it on. Where is it?
So, one of the things that I think of when we kind of talk about like this, for example, I just brought up this kind of short-term and long-term. Why should I even do meditation, for example, when I can just, if I'm feeling stressed out or something, or I can just exercise, or I can find people to talk with, which might be, if I'm feeling, for example, very lonely, is meditation really going to help me with this? Yeah. So why shouldn't I just do something that I know will be better in the immediate short term, and even, exercise is something that also is beneficial in the long term?
Yeah. I think, first of all, we need to say that it's not mutually exclusive. So, we also don't want to put down any of the more conventional methods like sports. I mean, there's so much literature showing, the benefits of it, like, clearly. But what makes meditation, I think, special is the level of self-knowledge you can attain from it. Because from like a good run, you can definitely feel better, for sure. Like, there's no doubt about it. But you will not learn something maybe about yourself, Okay, if you can make the case, if you really do some super intensive like kind of sports, you definitely get to realize your own boundaries, your physical boundaries, But with meditation, you realize your mental boundaries, and more than that, just generally like who you are and like where your weaknesses also lie in, when it comes to like these ego problems again, and attain a different depth of personality, even I would say, because it shapes you on a more profound level, I would say, than merely the physical one, and just this like just short-term alleviation of any kind of pains,
But this is actually something I actually even personally experienced with meditation, and probably my sole critique. But one thing that I've personally experienced with meditation is that I think before meditation, I wasn't aware of how often my mind was thinking, and maybe all these ego protection kind of mechanisms. And meditation, one thing that it definitely has done is it has made me completely aware of this, that it has brought this into the fore. And sometimes that's really unpleasant, because I think while meditation has made that clear, it's probably the only thing that helps me to deal with it. But, so much of our life we spend in ignorance, and ignorance is bliss. There's, so many world issues or issues with our friends that we willfully are ignorant about, and in turn, we experience happier lives. Why shouldn't I just be blissfully ignorant about, all these ego protecting service? So many people do it, and these people can achieve happiness early.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a question I think we could have a whole other episode about. Ignorance, I feel like, is bliss only as long as you don't know it. It's ignorance, and once you realize that through, for example, like meditation, that you were ignorant of some certain negative sides of yourself, you have the opportunity there, which can also at the beginning feel like a painful obligation, to kind of redeem that. But it's an opportunity. I feel like, it is painful to realize those things, like, no doubt, but it provides you with the opportunity for growth.
Yeah, but sometimes I think that, even if I never chose to meditate, maybe I wouldn't have been aware of how much I actually, I wouldn't have been aware of how much my mind is constantly thinking. Yeah. I get this a lot from friends of mine that don't meditate, that I tell them, your mind is constantly running. You think so many thoughts throughout the day, and they go, no, I don't. I'm not really thinking at all.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I was like that at some point. I didn't really realize how often my mind was running. And why is that not, something that if we can stay in that state, I know it sounds very silly because you have a chance for enlightenment, but do we actually achieve enlightenment, or do we just achieve kind of a realization that maybe is making us less happy?
I think the question is, do you want to have a deeper and more vivid and less judgmental perception of reality? If so, then I think you have a big interest, despite you being maybe ignorant of that fact at the moment, to get past that and to find some element for it. And clearly, if you have no comparison, if you have never meditated at all, and are not familiar with mindfulness at all, then you might be like, why should I do this? I'm okay right now. And I'm not going to judge that, but I think you might be missing out on something, So it's very hard to judge it if you never really gave it a serious try, and not just reflect upon it, okay, now like we talk about on an intellectual level, but really on an experiential level, that affects all of your body from second to second while you're sitting there, and just observe what's going on. Because in the beginning, it might feel quite, you might not have such a good access to your own inner happenings, but and then you have to get through a lot of, that's usually, I feel like how it is for most people, through a lot of unpleasant sensations to end up on the other side where you then finally can reap the benefits. So there's definitely one thing that is important to mention there about meditation, that in the beginning you might feel very much disencouraged by like how much, what you actually face there. because you're like, why should I do this? I'm not feeling better. And there's also like important point to mention that when you face your own unconscious, because that's what you're fundamentally doing, you have to be in a reasonably stable state of mind, or like mental health situation. There's also one thing actually they ask you before the Vipassana retreat is like, are you on any kind of depressive medication? Have you got any kind of diagnosis or something like that, especially relating to mental health, because then it might be too much. You might open up a valve that you cannot then close again, because it is powerful what you're doing there, and with like it is with any other powerful kind of method, there are also risks involved. Let's talk about a bit about that. What do you see any risks involved in meditation?
In meditation, no. In retreats, I would say. In retreats, I think, just talking about what you said there, and I don't think everyone should necessarily do a retreat. I think you should be kind of realistic. For example, in Europe here, these 10-day Goenka Vipassana, they are often what is kind of, at least from our circles, what is sought after and what people choose to go to, because of course it's free and it's accessible. But I do think that you should have really realistic expectations that it's going to be painful.
Yeah.
And I don't think you should go if, for example, you're a person that is experiencing loneliness or sincere anxiety, because starving yourself of social contact can be for 10 days is not, not something that any therapist will tell you to willingly do for good reason.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are some very few, but there are also interesting papers out there about like the actual risk of meditation, because there are people, few, but who have some kind of like meditation-induced even psychosis or some kind of breakdown while they're there. So that is definitely something I think to not neglect. Yet again, this is very, very, very rare, and for the vast majority, it has, I think, a very big upside. So you always, like it always is in life, you always got to do this, like, risk-benefit analysis to it, and most likely you will benefit from it.
Yeah.
But still, it's definitely something to be aware of.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
But now I'm putting back on my hat, my skeptic hat. Let's talk about the industry that has been kind of grown, specifically this mindfulness retreat industry in the West that has been grown. I was sent actually quite compelling arguments from a friend against this industry that, of course, I won't do justice here, but I did indeed find them in some ways quite compelling. There is something to be said about that. Of course, Goenka is a bit different, that it's accessible, but that these meditation retreats have taken something that is as simple as breathing, that you can teach to anyone and should be accessible for everyone. And they've kind of commodified it. The West has kind of commodified it and capitalized on it and now marketed it, where I've even experienced, listening to podcasts about meditation, people that these hosts would say something like, oh, I never actually knew how to meditate until I was on retreat.
Yeah.
Or I never could really truly experience the power of meditation until I went to a retreat. And of course, these people that I'm talking about, they also own meditation apps. They benefit from people going to retreat.
Clearly.
Is there something to be said that the West has really taken, and this industry of kind of profiting on it is wrong?
I think profiting from the betterment of lives itself, I don't see anything wrong with that. But what goes in hand with the commodification of such an old practice, such an old tradition imported here from the East, and alien to our culture, actually, to our Western culture, there's definitely something to be said about that. And I feel like that it is not wrong to charge people even money, like for an app, if it's giving you like, if it's actually providing value. The question is, do they provide value beyond mere breathing? It's just fundamentally, and that is important also to point out, it's just sitting down and focusing on whatever is going on right now inside of you, non-judgmentally. That already is like the core and the essence of it, and you don't need like necessarily 10 days to get that information into your head, but to really hammer it in again and again, and to look at this very basic fact actually from multiple perspectives and see the profoundness of it. I feel like that's something where a retreat can definitely help. And obviously some costs are incurred during that retreat. You have to eat, there are people cooking for you and stuff. And I don't see anything wrong with like charging money for that. But I get your point with the commodification. Yeah.
But isn't it also, for example, the building of these retreats, that it's kind of unrealistic because it's marketed to the West as, you can go on retreat and you'll learn so many lessons that you'll be able to integrate into your real life. And the reality of it is that your retreat life and your regular life are so unbelievably different that isn't it kind of wrong that it's marketed in this way that, I'm searching for the right words, but that they've, do you kind of understand what I mean?
Yeah, you don't think that the effects of the retreat translate as well to the everyday life as they are marketed to?
Well, I guess what I mean is, for example, in the Eastern tradition, yogis go on retreat, but they do retreats their whole life.
Yeah,
that's what it is there for. And the regular people in the East,
that's true.
They're not doing retreats.
Yeah,
because they know it's like this separation of what's reality and what's their life. Yeah. Their everyday life, and then the yogis, their everyday life is more or less doing retreats.
Yeah,
and so I feel there could be an argument that said that the West has taken this and now they're saying to normal people, well, no, retreats are for you.
Yeah,
but maybe this is unrealistic.
Yeah.
And then when people struggle to kind of integrate retreat life into their everyday life, isn't it wrong that we've kind of maybe created this beast, which the East wouldn't have even maybe created?
Yeah, it's important to point out that in the East, it's, the monk life, from where all this tradition is kind of originated from, is clearly separated from the normal lives of people. That there's a stronger separation there originally. And in the West, it's more like, okay, it's for everyone, but just a little bit, Fewest become then actually a monk. But again, I don't think, as long as you can like reap some serious benefits of it and feel like you have a deeper, more meaningful life and a clearer perception from that, I don't see why we would need to stick there to the original kind of conception of it, that you have the monks or the yogis and that you have the others, But I think we should slowly pivot towards the end and one of the last questions. We should what should somebody that who's interested now in this, in whom we sparked some curiosity about all of this, what would you advise him, or what would you kind of give him as some last few words here about it?
Yeah, if you're interested in doing a retreat, I think the first thing is develop a daily practice. I think that can be pretty key, and work up from there. One thing that you did, which I think was pretty wise, was that you tried to get to an hour of meditation before you began your retreat. I think that's quite wise. And talk to friends that have done it so that you are realistic about what you're coming into. Yeah. Mindfulness retreats shouldn't be conflated with wellness retreats.
Yeah, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
You definitely shouldn't come in with the idea like, I'm going to get a break from social media and my work life, and I'm going to be so stress-free, I'm going to be in the nature, or I'm going to be out in nowhere. I think this is something that it can be very dangerous, and this would be almost towards the point where I almost wouldn't recommend you to go on a retreat, even though I do agree with you that for the majority of people, it's very beneficial.
I absolutely agree. I would also say that, be realistic about the fact that it is very tough work. It's not wellness. And inform yourself about it, like with a podcast like this, and then make up your own mind. Don't try to put it in a box as quickly. But yeah, that's definitely what I would say.
Anything else?
I think I think we said one.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's okay. All right. I enjoyed this very much.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much for listening. And
see you in the next episode.
Next episode.